One of the prettier areas in Arroyo Grande is Oak Park, and a Civil War veteran named Joseph Brewer farmed there in the 1880s. I'm sure Brewer was an interesting man, but his commanding general at the Battle of Gettysubrg was even more interesting. Before the war, he'd been a congressman. Dan Sickles was married to the lovely Teresa, who was having a torrid love affair with the district attorney of Washington, Philip Barton Key, the son of the writer of the national anthem. When Dan was out, Teresa would wave a hanky from her bedroom window. Philip Barton Key, on a park bench below in Lafayette Square, would wave his hanky back, and then whatever you care to imagine followed. Well, as always happened, Sickles found out about the affair, and during a bout of enthusiastic hanky waving one day in Lafayette Square, he shot Philip Barton Key dead. He was in big trouble, but Sickles was well connected, and his defense lawyer, later Lincoln's Secretary of War, Edwin Stanton, was a good lawyer. For the first time in American history, Stanton used the excuse of temporary insanity to get his client acquitted of murder. So, what do you do with a disgraced congressman, a killer, who was judged to be crazy? Well, the only reasonable response is to make him a general 4 years later and put him in charge of 10,000 soldiers. So there was Sickles on July 2nd at Gettysubrg in the Blue Line, and Sickles, who had probably studied military tactics for 2 or 3 days, had learned one thing. You always want to take the high ground. That gives you the advantage over the enemy. And by golly, on that day at Gettysubrg, Sickles saw to his front high ground surmounted by a peach orchard. So he decided to take it. Let me play this little video for you. I'll let it loop a couple of times, and you will see that Sickles' Third Corps goes out, and then it comes back. Goes out, and then it comes back. Well, when it went out, the Third Corps ran into some hard-fighting Mississippians who fell on them like angry badgers, and the rate of fire they generated was intense. If you notice something else about that animated map, Sickles forgot to tell anybody he was going to take that peach orchard, so Third Corps went into it completely isolated, with no support on their left or on their right. This had a drastic effect on Joseph Brewer, later a farmer in Oak Park, and his 11th New Jersey Regiment. The fire from the Mississippians was so intense that poor Joseph Brewer lost 7 regimental commanders in rapid succession in 20 minutes, all of them killed. One of them was merely wounded, was being carried off the field in a stretcher, when he too was killed in his stretcher, along with all 4 stretcher bearers. Somehow Brewer survived all this, and there was a bit of poetic justice, because the guy who'd gotten him into such trouble had a Confederate cannonball shatter his leg, which of course was amputated. I'm not sure why. Maybe they had an empty glass case at the Smithsonian Institute, because that's where Sickles' leg bone wound up, along with the cannonball put on display, and once a year or so he would visit the Smithsonian and say howdy to what had once been his leg. There's one more incident of poetic justice. At the end of the war, the 11th New Jersey was issued Henry repeating rifles, lever-action rifles. Those are Henrys that these Illinois soldiers are showing off. I love the dog. Now, a Henry had a 15-round magazine, and a good soldier could fire 30 shots a minute. Most soldiers carried muzzle-loading rifles like that Springfield below the caption, and the best soldier could manage at most 3 shots a minute with a Springfield. So now the 11th had a 10-to-1 advantage in firepower in 1865. And I wonder if sometimes when he was turning over a field in Oak Park, if Joseph Brewer did not think back fondly on his 1865 Henry rifle.